Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be going over another Disney classic called The Little Mermaid. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to go through this story piece by piece. I'm going to summarize it a little bit, then start to dissect the individual characters. And what we're looking for are the common hero motifs that appear in different myths and even in our own lives here and there, which is one of the reasons why that story calls out to us. You and me, male, female, doesn't matter. So stick with me on this. There's a lot to glean from this one. The cat society, he just can't stand the fact that I'm wearing a black coat. It's just not a good thing for Orange Kitty anyway. So we're going to talk about The Little Mermaid today. This is one of the stories that, I found it interesting when I was young, when it first came out. It was like 1989. I was 8 at the time, so animation from Disney was getting better and better. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure my parents and grandparents at the time just wanted something they could put in the VCR, which I think is, what's that totally foreign these days, and just let it play, and then we'll just sit there and not do anything as young boys, me and my brother, for like 2 hours. Give them 2 hours of reprieve of not having to watch us and be interactive, I guess. I don't know. Because obviously, the main protagonist is a female. I like Aladdin. Aladdin was my preferred movie at that time area anyway. Disney was coming out with a lot of animated movies that really kind of pulled to everybody. There weren't hidden agendas. There was just the story that was meant to call to the culture. And we might have gotten away from that a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's not worth our time to go back and dissect some of the classics to see what exactly was appealing to us then. What about those stories has appealed to all of us in all ages past and ages in the future, in lore and myth, that can call out to us and help us live better lives now. Something like that. So the hero's journey is in this story. And both the feminine and the masculine can both embody the hero on the journey. It's not necessarily a masculine journey per se, but it usually is. The one in the feminine route is more of self-discovery. You're more discovering what you are. It's more of a realization, things lost. Less of a trek into the unknown and more of a re-realization of what you always were at that time. That's more of the feminine myth when it comes to progressing in the journey. So I'm going to summarize the story a little bit, and then I'm going to take some of the characters and I'm going to get into their psychology, because there's a reason why these fictional characters they resonate with us. Like, yeah, that's how that person would act, right? It's like a fictional pretend land, but at the same time they could act like that. Personalities with free will would act just like these characters would, or maybe they wouldn't, I don't know, but it appealed to our culture, that's for sure. Anyway, so the story goes something like this. They're mermaids, obvious fictional caption right there. It starts out with Triton having some sort of a singing ball for himself. Ariel, who's his youngest daughter, doesn't show up. She misses her cue. She's too busy playing and spacing out into the human world. So she has like a love of the unknown. They come a-calling. She needs to be more disciplined in her work. She keeps seeking after this human realm, this legendary thing she is taught she is never allowed to go toward because she's held in the grasp of her tyrannical father. And one day she sees somebody, Prince Eric, on the ship, and then a storm hits the ship. She saves his life and sings a song to him, and he is like haunted and captivated by her voice. So that's like etched into him. She falls in love with him. She wants to visit the human world. She meets Ursula. Ursula is the adversary. She is the obvious bad guy, and she has her 2 little mindless minions. And she asks Ariel, I'll let you go on land and have legs so you can be with this person you might love if you give me your voice, because there's a trade. And if you can't make him fall in love with you within this certain amount of time, then you're going to be one of these like mindless little mushroom guys over here. And she agrees. Why does she agree? She agrees, I think, because doing something is better than doing nothing. She sought adventure. So that's what she did. She said yes. And she actually does a good job with nature on her side. That's a good way of looking at that. The animals are helping him, prodding him once he gets to know her, because they do interact. The dog recognizes her. And if you haven't seen the movie, I apologize, but there's a scene on the beach where the dog that saw her before when she was in mermaid form sees her now with legs. She's clothed in like rags or something like that. The dog recognizes her. Prince Eric does not. Brings her back to the castle, and they start to just, they take care of her for a bit. They go on a romantic boat ride. Nature is singing to him on her behalf, because nature is on the side of the feminine. The biology of looking the part, the visual image for the masculine to perceive. And she gets really close, if not for, the adversary and her henchman. Turns the boat over before they were about to kiss. And then, because that got so close, the adversary herself took a human form, came up, hypnotized Eric, but before they were allowed to be married, there is a bit of disruption. But because the sun goes down, Ariel was not able to fulfill her part of the vow. Triton shows up. Triton is her tyrannical father, but he loves her, so he says, I will take her place. And it's written down. The trident is given to Ursula, and then out of freaking left field, Eric drives a boat into the monstrous witch that is Ursula. And then Ariel gets to live on land with Prince Eric. Happily ever after. Sort of. So that's the story. So how on earth does that resonate to us fish people, huh? Well, in order to get to that, we have to understand some of the myth that's been in ancient past. Specifically, the old man and the young woman kind of motif. And not necessarily in a romantic relationship, obviously. Not here. This is a father and a daughter. I just read Carl Jung's book on Salome and Elijah. It's the same motif. The father is old and wise. He can see things. He can see ahead. And he doesn't do anything except for his daughter. Like, she is the reason why he does anything. She can't see ahead. She's youthful. Her time is spent in imagination, of fantasizing. And there's safety in the imagination. So that's where Ariel stays. But she has the passion in her. She has the youth, the beauty. And he works for her. And she trusts him, but to a point. Because eventually she hits maturity. She hits a point where she needs her own adventure. And that's, all of us hit this in like adolescence. You kind of bounce off your parents a little bit. The role of a father figure, per se, is usually up until like age 9 or 10 to do everything with your child. Then after that, you're just supposed to kind of be there if they need you and work on yourself to be a better person. And that way you become a role model. So instead of doing that, the father, Triton, was being tyrannical. You cannot even think about the human realm. You're not allowed to. And when you look at like some of the later movies, which are prequels, turns out that Ariel's mom got crushed by a human ship, and so therefore shut down the entire kingdom. That's kind of how that works. Let's talk about Ariel for a second. Ariel is a good protagonist, especially in the feminine. She's young, talented, beautiful. She has innocence, obviously. She speaks with the animals, so nature is on her side. She longs for adventure. And she will take anything given to her, even if it's wrong. And that's the seagull talking to her, telling her what a dinglehopper is and all that. She makes friends with the unknown. She is in the water. The water is historically like people used to think space was just more water. The Mesopotamian stories say that fresh water and salt water mixed, and the division brought about El. That was like the first god, per se. So the water is viewed as like the rocky unknown, the chaotic depths. And you can understand this if you just think about the sea for a little bit. Like, we kind of understand normal here, but if you keep going down into the depths of the abyss, into the, like, a couple miles down, the sea creatures get scary, man. Who knows what the heck is down there, but like, it gets scarier the further down you go, like, at least as far as our standard of normal versus scary would be. But maybe that's just because it's unknown. And Ariel's also in the water. So she kind of takes that motif of the chaotic waters. This is one of the, in like all myth, the feminine is associated with the chaos in the waters, because the waters keep moving. There's a promise of danger, and there's a promise of nourishment or bounty in the water, and that's where Ariel is. But she seeks something else. She seeks the known. She seeks maybe to be known, something like that. So she keeps going to the human realm because she's told so many fantastic stories about it compared to where she lives. And then she sees Eric. Eric is the typical hero. From what I understand, Eric is the only character that does not sing a song in a Disney movie, at least the earlier cartoon ones. He braves the waters. He's not afraid of the ocean, even though he can't breathe in it. He fights the demons. He has manners. He's chosen by the culture. He's a prince. He's the leader of men. So he's high on that, hierarchy of one to be chosen as a mate, something like that. He sees past her handicapped, or her gift, because he eventually sees her. And that's what all women want, really, as far as I can tell. Regardless of how beautiful or ugly they are, they want you to see past that, because that's the dragon you have to fight. That's Ursula also, which becomes a monster. You got to get through that to get to her, because the attraction factor is also intimidation, and all you got to do is fight it. And that's what he does. Like, he is so puny when it comes to him versus Ursula in that movie. But he uses his skill set, which is piloting the ship, and rams it right into her. Imagine if he didn't try that and he just ran away. Like that, no, like the world would have been terrible, man. Especially for Ariel. Life would have not continued, because obviously they go on and you could see more movies with other little mermaid people. Father's an interesting character. He is Elijah. He's the one who can see. He sees ahead because he knows what will happen if she interacts with humans, how they will interact with her. They're dangerous. They have these giant machines that are almost unable to be understood. He's strong. He's wise. He's an old face, and dude, that guy is freaking jacked, man. He's a tyrant and a protector. You must obey his law. Period. There is no negotiation. When Ariel tries to stand up to him, he gets so mad he destroys all of her things, all of her hopes, because she dares to be defiant against his tyranny. And that hits him in the heart, and that's something the feminine can do to the masculine. Little girls can do this to their fathers like crazy. The tears start, that goes right past our facade into the heart, man, I'm telling you. When my little girls cry, I gotta bite my tongue sometimes, because sometimes you need to be the image of strength even though they're crying. And you'd be like, stop crying, because tears won't make things better. That's the reality of life. And if you're not teaching your daughters that, shame on you. You have to be tough on them even if they're crying. That's a tough lesson, man. Both for the girl or the boy, and for those in the pilot seat as parents. That's just a tough one. Triton is also correct. She does meet authentic danger when dealing with the human realm. He's righteous. He's sacrificial. He will do anything for her. And he does. He gives the whole kingdom away to the adversary, Ursula, when it was a choice between him or his daughter. He's obviously, like, she is the reason why he does anything. That's kind of like the id and the ego, even in our minds. We think of these two. We think of feeling, and then we think of thought. And those two mesh together. Carl Jung says there's a snake that rides between the two, the feeling and the thought, the transcendent and the material. Because you need to spend time in both realms to understand both realms. And that's you as a person. You have to understand your needs of hunger. You have to understand your needs of thirst, your needs of companionship. You have to understand them, how that feels to be lonely, in order to have any kind of insight as to how to think about it. The feeling is your point of reference, but you must lead with the head. You must let Triton lead. But there comes a point where if your feelings aren't met the correct way, sometimes your feelings will override your thought. And if you have never been in that place, I don't know what to tell you. You're lying to yourself. Nobody is 100% self-disciplined. Perhaps later in the next life we can be, but this war with the flesh, the flesh, the feeling, it'll creep up on you. It'll like jab at you and poke the lines. You think you can eat one more cookie? You know, you can stay up an extra hour. You'll be fine. You can spend $5 more here. It's okay. And that's incremental. And if you're not seeing correctly, as Triton does, if you don't have a cutoff point, things get extremely dangerous. And he understands that. He's ever watchful, sort of. He tries to have nature do his bidding, but nature's more on the side of Ariel than nature is on the side of Triton. Because that's just how it is, the masculine and the feminine. He fails as a parent in two ways. The first way is he obviously doesn't recognize when she is growing and needs to have adventure. Hey, let's go take a look at the humans together. I'll show you exactly why they're a problem. And maybe you can make your judgment from there. So he didn't give her authority over her own life. And maybe she was too young. Who knows? I mean, it's a fictional movie. He also fails because he pushes her away. Now, how do you, in that instance, hold on to her? Well, that's a tough one, man. That's extremely contextual. And this is, again, a fictional thing. Your child is rebelling against you. Usually, what I'm doing so far, and my kids are still young, 11 and 6, I engage in dialogue. Like, walk me through this. Why do you think it's wrong? And take your time. I want you to say it right. And maybe if they can't, I will say it for them until they say that's exactly how I feel. Because sometimes you're better at articulating than they are. So you have to help them articulate their feelings. That establishes a bond. Because you want understanding with your children. They're the best relationship you're ever going to have. So that's Ariel, Eric, and Triton. The last one, which is a necessity here, is Ursula. Ursula is just the picture-perfect epitome of like a C version of Satan. The adversary, or the accuser, that's what Satan means, the accuser. Not necessarily the serpent. The serpent is the same and a little bit different once you get into the mythological realms and you start talking about the Garden of Eden. Ursula is cast from the kingdom. That sounds familiar. She holds to the written law, the law of reality. She has to abide by it, and she forces King Triton to abide by it as well. And Ariel tricks her into signing her name. Because you signed your name, you cannot violate this anymore. It's like you are attached to your decision and you cannot unattach yourself from it. So she also abides by the transcendent law. She can't help it. So she's also legalistic to fulfill her needs. But ironically, once there's no more need of the law, she throws it away. Because the law is something you can hang over everybody's head, especially those who are trying to align themselves with God or goodness, because you have to have certain boundaries, otherwise you're outside of the light. She's envious and vengeful. She is the adversary and the serpent. But she's the serpent maybe in the incorrect way, or maybe not, because the serpent is supposed to, it's the line between emotion and thought. It's supposed to help mix the two, but it can also help divide the two terribly. That's kind of what she does, obviously. She wants to separate Ariel, she does, from Triton. Let her make decisions on her own without you helping her see what'll happen. So that's like the serpent in the garden talking specifically to Eve and not to Adam. But Adam's still there and he says nothing, at least in the garden. She's also necessary for growth. She's necessary to help things happen and move things forward. Because this whole thing is a story. It's a story that we can relate to. We can see that and be like, yeah, okay, things were done right, especially by the hero Eric. I had a teaching moment with my kids the other day. We were watching little stickmen beat each other up. Orange stickman got lacerated and he watched his friends get disintegrated in front of him. But then he was reborn and he self-healed and he had all this power and he obliterated the guy that lacerated him. And so I look at my daughter when it's all done. I'm like, okay, what's the moral of that story? And she's like, she's 11. And I'm like, do heroes win all the time? She's like, no. Like, obviously, he got trounced, dude. I'm like, what do heroes do? And she's like, they get up. That's what heroes do. They get up and they keep going. Because what happens? You might die. Okay. If it's a worthy cause, someone will see your sacrifice. They will think that your life that you gave is worthy of whatever you were trying to fulfill. And they want to pick up that mantle too. This is the martyrdom life, right? This is why martyrs are so powerful. It's one of the reasons that Christianity spreads so fast and so well. Because if someone dies for something that's worth more than life itself, because that's kind of what you're thinking about, what you're doing. If you martyr yourself for a certain cause, that's worth more than my individual finite life, because it deals with eternal aspects. Heroes see this, and other heroes can grab onto it. And watching that happen, watching somebody else go in the hero's journey to the bottom, and then that's where they perish, you become that person as you ascend to normal, and you come back with a gift. So the hero mantra, the hero archetype, can pass from person to person, which it does here as well. It starts out with Triton, roughly. He tries to save his daughter, but he can't. He's bound by legalism. And so that torch, the competence torch, gets handed to Eric, because there's nobody else. He is the finite human that has to try, and maybe die, to put an end to the adversary's sway on their life. Just by that act, he proves that she is worth fighting for. She is the reason for doing things, regardless of what she made happen, or what is happening now. And that's the masculine telling the feminine she's beautiful because she's worthy of fighting for. And that's part of the hero's journey. If you want to see more of the hero's journey, click this video up here that YouTube recommends. We can keep going on this journey together.